Hello everyone, today I'm going to talk about my max patch that I've built for the piece Imitate, which is for solo, vibraphone and electronics. So the main purpose of this max patch, or what it does basically, is it takes what's coming in this case a vibraphone, will analyze it, analyze what the pitch is, and then basically spit that out. So it's trying to copy what the vibraphone is doing in the case of my piece. Um, but obviously there's a little bit more as well. So I'm just going to take you through uh, the patch just step by step. It looks quite complicated. It's not all that bad, so don't worry. So the first thing is we have our input, and that goes into this little box here called retune. And the retune is probably the most important part of this patch. It'll basically take the input, it'll analyze it, and then it will spit out a frequency of what it believes is the frequency out of the bottom here. So you could basically get a cycle box or a sine wave generator, plug it in there, plug it into some speakers, and you would get a pitch out. But obviously that's a little bit boring, and having a pure tone all the way through can be quite grating. So there's a little bit more to this patch just to spice it up a little bit. So what we have here are some boxes there. They're labeled fundamental, overtone 1, etc. What these basically do is they'll take the frequency out of the retune box and then times it by an integer to create a harmonic series, basically, so that the sound you're getting out is a little bit more interesting. So this fundamental box doesn't times it by anything. Overtone 1 times it by 2, times it by 3, times it by 4, etc. To give yourself a kind of overtone series there. So to the left of that, you've got a big long list of numbers, and then a list of numbers there as well. These basically control how loud those overtones are going to be. And if you have a look here, if I click on that bang there, you'll see that all these numbers have changed to correspond to the numbers that are underneath, and again here, and once again there. So if I click on this one, say, we'll have just the fundamental sound, so 100 for the fundamental sound and 0 for everything else. It will just get the fundamental. If I click on this one, you'll get 100 fundamental, 80 for the first overtone, 60, etc. So you get a kind of harmonic series as well, a more complex sound. And then if I click on this one, you'll see you're just getting overtone 3, 5, and 7. And so no fundamentals there. So you get another particular kind of sound. So those control the volume. I'm quickly going to talk about what's going on up here. So we have a box that says key, and then a box that says select 28, 29, 30. And those numbers just correspond basically to the left, right, and up buttons on the keyboard. So basically you can control these bangs without having to click on them. When I was performing this piece, I used a makey, which is something you can plug into the computer. And it's basically just a keyboard you can plug into the computer, and the player can control this while they're playing the piece as well. But obviously, you don't have to use a makey, you can use whatever you want. But this is just so that it gives a little bit of versatility. It means you're not staring at the computer all the time. So a quick explanation about what that was. If we look at all these sub patches here, they have three things going into them. So first was the retune, so that's the value, that's the frequency going inside that the retune has analyzed. The second thing that's going inside is this box here, which controls your ramp, which I'll talk about in just a moment. And the third thing that's going inside is the values there, how loud those overtones are going to be. And then out of each one, you'll get your sound. So we're going to open, say, the first overtone up. We can have a little look. So I'm just going to quickly explain what these are all doing as well. So number one is your frequency in hertz that you're getting, and that will show up here. Now, since this is the first overtone box, you'll take that frequency and you multiply it by 2. For the fundamental box, say, you'll see that it's not multiplied by anything, and the overtone 2 is multiplied by 3, etc., etc. So I'll open this one back up again. So we'll take the frequency, multiply it by 2, and then it goes into this box that says split 0 and 1. What that basically does is it says if the number is between 0 and 1, it'll spit out of the left side, and if it's not between 0 and 1, it comes out of the right. Basically, that's just so that when the vibraphone stops playing, the max patch carries on, because if you could imagine, when there's no sound, this number jumps back down to 0, and all of a sudden it stops, and it's kind of jarring, and I didn't want that. So this basically means that the pitch that's coming out of the patch carries on a little bit longer. This goes into a box that says this is a trigger, and it triggers a floating number and a bang at the same time. So that's basically so that this, the left side and the right side, happens at the same time. This then goes into a line function, which is the ramp that I was talking about, which is controlled by this box over here. So this is basically how quickly you can get from one pitch to another pitch. Say the vibraphone plays an A and then it plays an F sharp, say, and the computer recognizes that. It's basically how quick you can get from that pitch to another. In this piece, I've actually left this completely at 0. I haven't touched it, but perhaps this can be used in future pieces. So that's why it's there. And then that comes out of this box into our cycle box. So that's our sine wave generator. And then it goes into this gain meter here. What's also going into this gain is this, which is number 3. And that is just how that's how loud each of these boxes are. These correspond to these numbers here. So this is overtone 1, so at the moment there's nothing in there, so this will be 0. And then this comes out of this box here. And so basically inside every single one of these you have the same thing. The only difference being this is times by 2, this is times by 3, etc. And these all come down here along this cable and into this big gain meter here. So that's that bit explained. I'm quickly going to talk about what's going on up here. So here we have a meter that analyzes how loud the sound coming in is, and that will show up here as a value. The box underneath says if that value is greater than 0.02, then we want this trigger to go on. This toggle edge box basically says if the trigger is on, we want to bang on the left side, and that comes down here and triggers this 100. And if this is off, we want a trigger here to bang that 0 out. So that basically says if the sound is greater than 0.02, we want this to turn on, and to 100, which is kind of a reasonable volume. And then if it's below 0.02, we want it at 0, so we want it off. And then that all basically comes down here and into our output there, our speaker as well. One last thing I want to quickly talk about is just this thing that's going around the side there. That is basically as just a way to amplify the vibraphone in this case if you need to. So if you're playing in a small space, you probably won't have to amplify it. It should be loud enough as it is. But if you are playing in a louder space, you do have that choice to amplify it as well. So there we go. I hope that explained a little bit about my patch, and thank you for listening.